We met when I was just 20. I didn't have much. No car, no house, only dreams and a quiet hope that someone would choose me. His name was Daniel. He smiled easily, spoke like he understood the world. He made me feel seen, as if I was not invisible anymore. I remember the night he said, "Let's build a life together." And I believed him, because I wanted to believe in something, in someone. We got married just 6 months later. It felt fast, but I wasn't afraid. Because when you've known loneliness, love, even the idea of it, feels like a miracle. The first days of marriage were quiet, simple. We moved into a small apartment on a quiet street. Daniel worked part-time at a gas station. I worked behind the counter at a clothing store. We didn't have much, but it felt like we were building something real. I cooked on one small stove burner, washed our clothes in the sink. Every night, I imagined a bigger home, more laughter, a house filled with tiny feet running down the hallway. And soon, that dream started to come true. First came Lily, then Ethan. 2 years later, Nora, and finally our baby, Owen. 4 children, 4 beating hearts, each one louder and more full of life than the last. Our home was small, but it was warm with their laughter. I woke up early each morning, made oatmeal and packed sandwiches, walked them to school, held their tiny hands across the crosswalk, kissed their foreheads goodbye. At night, I made dinner, helped with homework, gave baths, and read stories. Every day was full. Every moment was for them. But Daniel began to disappear. At first, he came home late. Then he stopped working, said he was tired, said he needed rest. And so he rested, for weeks, for months. He stayed in bed until noon, watched television, played games on his phone. I asked, "Can you help with the kids today?" He said, "I worked for years. Let me rest now." I wanted to shout, that was years ago, but I stayed quiet, because shouting in front of children doesn't fix things, and silence felt safer. Daniel didn't speak to the kids unless it was to scold them. If Lily spilled juice, he yelled. If Ethan asked too many questions, he barked at him to be quiet. Nora would flinch when he entered a room. Owen, still a toddler, cried at the sound of his father's footsteps. And me, I kept going. I worked. I cooked. I cleaned. I taught. I held. I comforted. I held our family together like tape on glass. Cracked, but not yet broken. One night, I burned the rice. I had Owen on one hip and a spoon in the other hand. The pot smoked. Daniel walked in, sniffed, and said, "You can't even cook anymore." Then he threw the pot into the sink and left the room. I didn't cry. Not then, not while holding my baby. But later, when the kids were asleep, I sat on the bathroom floor and cried into a towel, so no one could hear. That became my routine. Fall apart in secret, rebuild in silence. I stayed, not because I loved him, not even because I was afraid. I stayed for them, because where would we go? We had no savings, no family nearby, no car, No spare bed waiting for a mother with 4 children. And I told myself, at least they have a father. But the truth, they didn't. He was there in the room, but he was not there in spirit. He was a shadow, cold, angry, detached. We lived with a ghost who shouted. Then one day, Ethan came home from school with a drawing. Our family. He had drawn me, his siblings, and himself. Daniel wasn't in the picture. "Where's your dad?" I asked. Ethan shrugged. "He doesn't come with us. He just stays on the couch." That night, I couldn't sleep. Suddenly, I saw it clearly. All the tiny moments I had brushed aside, the fear in their eyes, the way they tiptoed around their own home. They didn't speak to him. They came to me for everything. Always. One Saturday, Lily dropped a bowl. The crash echoed. Daniel stormed in and shouted, "Are you stupid?" She froze. She was only 9. I stepped in front of her. "She's just a child, Daniel." He turned to me, his eyes blazing. "Don't talk to me like that." But I stood my ground. "Then don't talk to her like that." He slammed the door. The kids didn't move, not a sound. I wrapped my arms around Lily and whispered, "You're safe now." But even I wasn't sure that was true. One night, my back hurt so badly I couldn't pick up Owen. Daniel saw me struggling. He chuckled and said, "You walk like an old woman." I said, "It's my back." He replied, "Maybe it's from all that talking you do." Still, I said nothing. But something inside me shifted that week. A small question started to echo. Is this really the life I want my children to remember? Then came the moment I can't forget. Nora, only 7, sat beside me on the bed and asked, "Mom, why don't you leave?" I froze. "What do you mean?" I asked. She looked down at her small hands. "Because Dad doesn't like us." I felt my heart tear in half. And just like that, I couldn't pretend anymore. That night, Daniel asked why dinner was late. I didn't answer. I just looked at him, and I saw not the man I married, but a stranger. One who no longer saw me. One who never saw them. That's when I stopped surviving and started planning. I asked my manager for extra hours, worked weekends, came home sore, but with every paycheck, I put a little cash into an envelope and hid it under the bed. My steps became slower, but my purpose stronger. Daniel noticed. "Why are you working so much?" I said, "We need the money." He said, "No, you just want to stay away from me." He wasn't wrong, but I didn't respond. Then one day, Owen got sick. High fever, cough. I stayed up all night holding him. In the morning, exhausted, I asked Daniel, "Can you watch him for an hour so I can sleep?" He said, "I'm not a babysitter," and walked out. I sat on the kitchen floor and cried. Not just for Owen, not just for myself, but for every moment I thought love would be enough. Still, I kept saving. Each week, I counted my hidden envelope. It wasn't much, but it was something, a seed of hope. One evening, I passed by a small white house near my work. It had 2 rooms, a tiny kitchen, no yard, but when I saw it, I saw my kids laughing inside. I called the number on the sign. A woman answered. She was kind. The rent was almost too much, but not impossible. I told her, "I'll call you back." That night I counted again, and I whispered to myself, "It's time." Over the next week, I began to pack, quietly, carefully. I told the kids, "We're going to a new house soon, but it's our secret." They all nodded, even Owen understood. On our last night, I looked around that apartment one final time. It had held our laughter, our pain, our silence, but it no longer held us. At dawn, while Daniel was still asleep, I gathered the bags, woke the kids, and we walked out the door. I looked back once, and I didn't feel fear. I felt strength. We took the bus across town. We took the bus across town. When we arrived, the woman handed me the keys. I opened the door. The house was bare, plain walls, no furniture, but to us, it was beautiful. Lily spun in the empty room. Ethan opened every cabinet. Nora hugged me tight. Owen sat on the floor and smiled. That night, we ate bread with butter. No table, no chairs, no beds, but we laughed. There was no shouting, no fear, just peace. And in that silence, we began to heal. Daniel called. I didn't answer. He texted, "Come back." But I had already left. Not just the house, not just the man. I left the lie that staying was love. I left the belief that silence